Did you know there are 300 million people worldwide that live with the disease without a single approved therapy? Even worse, the current healthcare system doesn't incentivize finding cures for these populations because they're often too small. On this Rare Disease Day, we're highlighting the story of Madison, a rare disease patient who's fighting against the clock to preserve her ability to walk and live a full life.
Kids that are diagnosed with LBSL as young as Madison will lose the ability to walk by their late teens, most likely. We kind of have this clock that we're racing against to try to find a cure, find something to preserve her ability to walk. My name is Morgan Vogt. I am the mother of two children, Madison, who's 6, and Hunter, who is 4, and we live in San Diego. So Madison has so much joy. She is the most joyful kid I know. She charges into everything, school, therapies, everything, with a huge smile on her face. Madison started missing all of her gross motor milestones around 9 months. So she wasn't pulling to stand. She didn't even want to be standing. We'd have to make her stand holding on to a couch, and she wouldn't move her feet. She would just stand there and hold on to the couch and scream. And so we started going down this diagnostic path because I was like, this is weird. My kid doesn't want to move. And that was the thing that kind of tipped everybody off to, hey, this is a really rare disease.
There are about 10,000 rare diseases that affect, in America, 30 million Americans, and it's estimated about 300 million people around the world. So though each rare disease is really rare, actually collectively when you combine them together, it's actually very common.
By the time we were actually able to get more of a diagnosis, she was almost 2 when we went and had the full brain and spinal MRI. So I was sitting there in the hospital and it was only supposed to be 2 hours. And then it's 3 hours. And you're like, what did they find? What did they find? And 2 days later, I got a phone call from our neurologist and she was like, hey, has anybody talked to you about Madison's MRI? And I was like, no, what's up? She was like, there's actually significant problems with her brain and spinal cord. Have you ever heard of a leukodystrophy?
People think about leukodystrophies as disorders of cells that make myelin. Myelin is the insulation around your nerve cells, like you have insulation around your electrical cords that power your phones, right? It primarily affects people in their ability to move around, right? Because it affects all parts of the brain, but also the spinal cord. It affects people's ability to maintain and sustain normal movement. So in the beginning, children might only have walking abnormalities. Later on, people may develop more profound difficulties with motor skills, right? Including even the ability to swallow and talk and sometimes even breathe.
And I said, Luca, what? She said, I've referred you to a really specialty white matter clinic. They're gonna contact you. They've got a spot for you. They have an opening for you in 2 weeks. They're gonna be calling you and they'll explain everything. And that's when it's so validating, but also devastating. And she was like, hey, also don't Google. Of course you're gonna Google this stuff, You're like, what is a leukodystrophy? Start Googling, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my kid is gonna die. We were able to get Madison's diagnosis a couple months later and then learn, actually, so it was a huge relief for me on one hand because I'd spent every day crying, being like, what? How long will my child live? To find out that actually she's probably going to live and just have kind of more of a reduced quality of life.
This disorder has no approved therapies. Sometimes if people are having one of these episodes, we're talking about people will try steroids more as sort of a way to slow the disease down, but it doesn't really have any approved therapies or even any unapproved therapies. Doctors are very good at borrowing medications off the pharmacy shelves for rare disorders if they think there's a good rationale for why it might work to treat things, but for LBSL there really isn't anything like that yet.
It's estimated that over 95% of the more than 10,000 rare diseases don't have a single approved therapy. There are about 3,000 FDA-approved drugs that are approved for about 3,000 diseases. Right now, the estimates are that over 10,000 more diseases don't have a single approved therapy. So while we've made a lot of progress for these 3,000 diseases with these 3,000 drugs, there is so much more work to be done. And so through every cure, we're trying to work with the drugs that already exist, that are already at your local pharmacy, to make sure that their full potential is unlocked to help as many patients as possible, so that while we continue to develop new gene therapies and ASOs and all these really important brand new treatments, that we make sure we help all the patients that are waiting for solutions right now.
We have this phrase in the LBSL community, and that's time is myelin. And so every second, that ticks by, that is myelin that you can't replace, you can't fix. You can't do anything about it. So it's so hard to know that like a lot of what we do with our rare diseases, we treat the symptoms. So your kid, can't walk, well, maybe it's the fever, we can treat the fever, we can't treat the ataxia. We can't stop the progression. And that's so hard because as a parent, I just want to fix it. And there's so many things, you want to put a Band-Aid on a boo-boo, you want to, hug away the tears, and to know that right now I'm really powerless to actually fix it.
You mainly treat kids with supportive care, right? So you make sure that people are followed by the right team of doctors. If they have primarily movement problems, you make sure that they're followed by something called a rehab physician or a physiatrist. A neurologist can help manage problems with tone, right? Stiffness and spasticity that can arise from the disease. So it's mainly sort of around that type of supportive care.
We have done early intervention. We had her in physical, occupational, and speech therapy, running to lots of appointments, lots of doctor's appointments. And I think we had tabbed it up earlier this year, and I know that we have spent, by now for sure, more than 600 hours of Madison's life just in therapy appointments. And that's not even counting the driving to and from. It's a financial commitment in a lot of ways because a lot of the therapy that we're pursuing right now isn't covered by insurance. To know that, we're so close in so many different areas to find ways to help her with her energy levels or slow or stop the progression of her disease is really exciting. But man, it is hard to wait for.
We don't know if her form of leukodystrophy, if there is a drug out there waiting to be matched to her disease, but we do know that if there is a drug waiting to be matched for her disease, that we're going to do everything possible to find it, so that every patient out there who could possibly benefit from our approved drugs does actually benefit from that drug.
I had a friend tell me that only I can be Madison's mom. So for other rare disease families, like only you can be that person's mom or dad. Like you are their advocate, you know that child. And it is exhausting, but it is so fulfilling. To me, it's very encouraging to know that I was given this child and I get to be the advocate for Madison. I get to be her #1 cheerleader. I choose to see her as a blessing, and it's an honor to get to raise a little warrior. And I hope that all the other rare disease parents too can see it as a blessing. They can find qualities in their child that they are proud to nurture